So who have we got online tonight, Scott?
Oh, we've got a mixture of individuals. I'm also going to record it from the front so that we've got it. If you don't mind, I'm just going to check quickly that that's working. Yeah, we're good to go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, apologies for being a little bit late, something that was just out of our control. We're very excited, Justin. Thanks very much for your time tonight. It's a real pleasure and an honor to have you online. As I said, the intention this year is to be trying to do at least 2 webinars a month, one focusing on local and one on offshore. But I thought that what was very interesting to start off with was what is happening with the internet. And then everyone's talking at the moment with regards to auctions and repossessed properties and everything else. So my logic was, I'm in Durban. Why not come and see you and have a chat and see what your thoughts were on the internet and how it's impacting with regards to auctions and property in general, basically. But, you know, for the purposes of everyone out there, tell us just a little bit about Justin Clarke and private property and who you are, you know, so they've got an understanding of where you're coming from.
Cheers, Scotty. Well, that's a lot of questions. But anyway, let's kick off with private property and really the internet, because that's something I love talking about. So, guys, really, what is private property? It's a platform that helps buyers and sellers to buy and sell property. And to go back a little bit, how did I get into this business? Well, I was on the other side of the fence. I'm not a technologist like Scotty is a bit. I was doing property development, and I looked at the inefficiencies in the market, and I thought, my gosh, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And then along came the internet, and I thought, wow, the internet is really going to change the way real estate is bought and sold. And the interesting thing is we've been at this thing for about 10 years, and suddenly in the last 2 years, it's just tipped completely. And people are using the internet like never before, and people are really buying property and doing their research on the net. And we've been waiting for this to happen for a long time, but it's really exciting to see it.
What do you think was the tipping point? What caused that to actually happen?
I think it was the recession, actually, Scotty. You know, it's interesting. People have to reevaluate their business models, everybody, including us at private property. But people were looking for better ways and more efficient ways of advertising their property and getting it to the buyer. And obviously the internet is the best thing, and that's what's kept us going for 10 years. If you want to buy a property, life is hectic. Life is really, really busy. We don't have time to drive around and look at properties for fun. Anyway, the traffic's too chaotic if you live in Joburg. So,
and the potholes now.
Yeah, the potholes. It just makes so much sense to be able to go somewhere where there is information, where you can do your research, and when you do get in the car and drive, you go to the place that you're going to buy.
And do you think accessibility in terms of the users being able to get on the internet, more people having broadband, etc., has had an impact?
Well, I mean, that's huge, and it's very disappointing that us in South Africa are being left behind to a certain extent on the continent. You see that this huge continent of ours that's got so much potential, there's countries like Kenya and to a certain extent Nigeria that are doing it better than us. You've got countries like Mauritius where you've got huge uptake. I mean, everybody's got access to the internet. And yeah, it's exclusive and it's expensive. So,
and do you see that changing in the foreseeable future? Just we're getting a bit of property
yeah,
here.
It's very important because everything is going to change with it. Yep. Everything that we do is going to change. Already it's the way we book travel, the way we search for property, the way we do a bunch of stuff. It's just going to become so much easier to use the internet because more stuff can come through the little pipe that gets to your computer.
Look, I remember just a personal story. I remember in 2002 I was living in London, and I was working late at night, and the guy that came in to clean the offices was explaining to me why he had just gone onto broadband. That was 2002.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he now gets his telephone, his DSTV, his Sky, his DSTV, and his broadband all for sort of £20 a month. And he said his kids were spending more than that on the dial-up modem. And I thought to myself at that time, you know, if the cleaner had broadband,
yeah,
you know, what was it going to do? And I mean, I literally experienced how in England it just changed the way everything was done. Property, insurance, travel, as you mentioned, because it was accessible. I mean, when I left London, a 2 meg broadband line was free.
What sort of connectivity did you have in 2002, I must ask?
Yeah, well, I can't remember the exact thing, but in 2007 when I left, a 16 meg broadband line was £10 a month, which is 120 grand.
Yeah.
You know, just to put in perspective. But let's get back to property. I mean, just in terms of, where do you actually see the internet going, particularly with regards to South Africa and social media, etc.? What impact is it having on your business and in terms of the internet as a whole and business on the internet?
Social media obviously has huge impact on the way that we transact, and I think that we haven't seen much of it yet, but it's really going to affect the way we transact. I mean, you advertised for a new person to join your company and you use LinkedIn and you had a huge response. So in recruitment, what effect will LinkedIn have on recruitment? Massive. And I believe that certainly in the real estate sector, you need to get your peers to help you to make a decision about a house, especially if it's a home. You're going to ask family and friends to have a look at it with you. You're going to share that link on the likes of a Facebook or a social media site. But let's take social media a step deeper. In real estate, when you're looking online for a property, you're going to want to get all the information about that property. That's not 5 pictures like you see generally on the average internet site of the estate agent. I'm talking about a complete walkthrough.
Yeah.
And so YouTube, for example, is social media. And YouTube is probably the best way that you can record what that house really, really looks like. So all aspects of social media are going to change the way that the property is sold. But let's think about how it affects us. Well, what our business is geared up to do is to go out and get that data and load it onto the internet so that you can share it. So we will go out and do the videos and the virtual tours and add the rich data to the internet that's needed. How it gets shared, that's what's going to happen in the future.
Just a matter of interest to add to that, I heard 2 days ago, YouTube now accounts for 12% of all internet traffic, and video accounts for more than 50%. In terms of what you're saying. So, certainly the trend is going in that direction. It is a question I had later, but I think we can bring it up now because it very much for me it ties in is the social proofing as well. And what I mean by social proofing, for those of you who don't understand, it's if you bought or sold something on eBay, you build up a track record, and you're either a good guy or you're not, and you can't spend money to change that view. And particularly in the property industry, there's a lot of credible people, and there's also a lot of uncredible people, and a lot of people have been burnt, etc., etc. And my experience in the property industry is that unfortunately a lot of people get away with it. They opened up under a new name, a new company, spend a new marketing budget, and boom, they're off again, and another 100 suckers get caught out pretty much. With social proofing, that won't be able to be possible because you'll have a digital signature that stays with you, and I think that will provide a lot of comfort for buyers and sellers.
Phenomenal. Maybe that's the first lesson of the evening. If you're going to search for property and you find an estate agent that you're dealing with, Google their name and see what comes up, and look at their LinkedIn profile, look at their Facebook profile, and you might see some information which steers you in the direction of another agent.
Yeah.
But or you'll see on the other side, you'll see the positive stuff about that agent.
Well, I mean, look, the beauty with social proofing, as I see it, is that if someone does have integrity and is providing a good value service, they can actually charge a premium because people want to deal with that person. And your amount of marketing spend is irrelevant in the new age. In terms of that, it's more about performance and delivery on what you actually say you can do. Let's move on to the next one. Property in South Africa. How have you experienced it for the last 2 years? Obviously had a bit of a tricky time since October 2008 when Lehman Brothers spoiled the party for everyone. But what is your thoughts and where's it going basically?
Well, this is a very broad subject as well, Scotty. But I mean, property, I've got a passion for it. I bought properties very recently in the last couple of months, so I'm still quite positive about the real estate situation. I don't see much happening in the next year, certainly with house prices. So you say, then why am I buying property? Because the fundamentals are so much better than they have been for the last 4 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So why on earth would you buy property when you can only get a 6% yield on it? Well, you're hoping for capital growth, but you don't know if you're going to get it. So right now you're buying properties at below their market value, and you're buying properties that are giving you a good positive yield. It's a buyer's market. It's a fantastic place to be in a position to acquire property. So that's my view on the property market. I think it's going to be flat for the rest of the year. I think we're probably going to see some interest rate increases because our low interest rates are there because of poor fundamentals. And so, yeah, in general, how did we escape the property crisis? Well, obviously we escaped it very well, thanks to very conservative policies of government, where banks were not allowed to invest offshore very easily, and of course money stayed in the country, and the Credit Act, which came in late 2008. All these things, I think, helped us significantly to avoid the big crisis. And let's face it, property prices haven't really done much. They certainly haven't contracted like they have in Europe and in the States.
Well, I was reading a report today. Las Vegas is down 55% from its peak. You know, put that in perspective. You know, you sitting at home, you know, properties are worth R1 million, and you know, 2 years later it's worth 500,000 rand. It's quite a big shock to the system. So, yeah. You know, just putting in perspective, you know, when people think that they've had a difficult year in comparison to what's happened overseas.
Has there been any international comparison done? I'm sure that there were some figures released recently.
What do you mean by that? In terms
comparing international markets and who survived the best in the last?
Well, look, the research at the end of last year was that out of the G20 countries, Australia was the only one that remained positive through the global financial crisis. So all 19 other countries lost. Australia was the only one to actually to come out on positive territory, and that's because their Reserve Bank acted very, very quickly and dropped their interest rates so quickly and brought in stimulus, etc., etc. So, but I mean, you're looking at on average in America about 40%. In the UK, it was about 15% below, you know, that it dropped to, and has recovered in certain markets. So, you know, but it's pretty much the Anglo-Saxon, Spain and Ireland have taken a massive knock.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting completely off topic now, but Ireland alone, they reckon 1 in 5 houses in Ireland standing empty, just in perspective. So, but just in terms of, you know, the internet and how it's impacted on property sales, both globally and in South Africa. I mean, obviously you said in the last 2 years there's been a huge uptake, but what's your experience, you know, and I know you've got a lot of business partners overseas that work in other markets, etc. What's your experience on what's happening both here and globally?
Well, I think the effect of the internet on the property market, it makes it more efficient because you can distribute information better and more efficiently to a greater volume of potential buyers. So it's all about how many buyers you can get to the market. Obviously, we're going to talk about auction, and auction it's vital to have buyers at an auction. And the reason why properties sell at a discounted price generally at an auction is because there aren't enough buyers to be able to bid on the property. So the internet, obviously, you're able to access a huge volume of buyers very, very quickly. Effectively makes the market more efficient.
And would you say that for normal buying and selling as well as auctions, you know, for the average man in the street who's buying their property as well?
Look at properties on our website. Look how many people are actually viewing the property, and you will see that it can be 100 to 1,000. And how many people would you have through the average show day? You would never get 100 people through a show day. Well, you might, but it's highly unlikely. So a lot more eyeballs are going through those properties than would normally go through those properties. So what does that do? Effectively, it means that the right buyer is getting their property for the right price.
Yeah.
If you have an open mandate where you have a dozen estate agents with a small pool of buyers that they're taking through, let's say the exposure is 30 people, is the right buyer amongst that pool of 30 people? Probably not. So I say that the internet has opened up the market and made it a lot more transparent and effectively made it more efficient.
Just on that note, and you have heard the story before, but for the viewers, I wanted to punt private property a little bit. My wife was selling a house, and we with one of the major established brands in this country. We had a show day, and she had 7 show days in a row, and I probably 70 odd people, as you know, came through that show day, and there was no offers of any sort. And I tended to get the impression that people would tend to be tire kickers that were in the suburb just trying to see what was going on. And I persuaded her to put it on private property, and the very first lead I got actually bought the property, and we sold it for a good value as well. And I believe there's 2 reasons for it. The first one is exactly what you just said, in terms of there's more eyeballs, and more specifically, the people that are looking in that specific area can you know, funnel it down straight away. But I also think in the current market, the wannabe buyers, particularly for that type of property, it was about R1 million sort of first-time family homeowner house stuff. Those type of people are going on the internet to
Indeed.
search. You know, they've got better things to do with their Sunday afternoon than travel around show houses. You know, so it's just my own experience. But and tell us, you know, let's move on to the auction side. I mean, what are your thoughts on auctions and online auctions? Obviously, private property does them. You know, what is the impact with regards to where the auction market's gone?
Okay, this is the topic of today's debate. But first of all, if I can say that online auctions haven't worked anywhere in the world. We thought we could change that, and we have a product which we launched with Bid or Buy. There's quite a few people still putting their properties on auction there, but in reality, what's happening is the property's not selling on auction, so they're not going through the whole bidding process. For those of you who don't know, we use Bid or Buy's auction engine, and you can, on a Wednesday at 8 o'clock when an auction opens, you can place a bid. It's actually a lot of fun because you can watch that property go up. As you outbid, you get an email that that leads you to place, you know, to increase your bid, and you can have a great day bidding up on that particular property. But in reality, what's happening, Scotty, is people aren't using the auction engine, but they are waiting for the auction to close. So they're looking at the closing price, and then they're phoning the selling agent or seller and making a deal. So they, the properties are selling, but not as a direct result of the auction process, which is quite interesting. So let's look at how properties are generally auctioned. In Australia, it's very big to have an auction by an estate agent. And why do people do it? The seller does it because he wants to get the best price and have a conclusive sale that he knows what the result is at the end of the month. So they work fantastically well. People trust the process. Buyers do go by en masse to these auctions. You can get 40, 50 people at an auction, which is fantastic. And of course, it is a substantial way of selling. Let's look at those type of auctions in South Africa. First of all, the real estate industry hasn't really bought into it. And those that are auctioning at the moment tend to use the auction as a starting bid. So you will go to the auction, you'll spend your day at the auction, it'll go under the hammer, you think you've got the property, and then you've got a period where the seller can accept the offer. And then in that period, the agent or whoever it is, the auctioneer, will run around and try and get a better offer on that price. So generally, the property does not sell to the person that bids on it and that wins it at the auction. So that is a pity, Scotty, and that's the reason why auctions don't really work as successfully as they should do in South Africa. And don't get me wrong, I think auction is a fantastic way of selling a property. I just wish we could get more people to the property.
Yeah.
But don't give up, because we still have a couple of things up our sleeve. We really want to focus on auctions. We've got two other different types of auctions, and perhaps I should explain those. You have an auction of a guy selling his house. So if you're looking to offload one of your investment properties, you would get hold of Auction Alliance or one of these guys. They will take the property on. You'll pay the marketing cost up front. They will advertise it, and then on the day it goes under the hammer. The auctioneer gets his commission up front effectively, and the property will then sell 30 days after that closing the closing date. So that's the one type of auction. Then you have auctions that are urgent auctions. That might be a sale and execution, or a deceased estate auction, and those are a lot more interesting. Reason is because there's an urgency at selling that property, and we've been trying to get exciting properties onto our website for a long time, because hell, we're actually property people, we're investors, we love this stuff, and we want to get discounted stuff on there.
Yeah.
So these sales and execution are fantastic, but who the hell knows where a sale and execution is going to happen, because it's the sheriff that is in control of a sale and execution. And the sheriff doesn't go out of his way to publicize the sale of that property. He's required by law to advertise it in the local newspaper in a little square ad 2x2. But what FNB has done with us is they've taken the initiative here, and they've said, listen, if we can get more people to go to these sheriff auctions, the chances are we're going to get better bids at the auction. We don't have to buy the thing in. So we do have now this product where we are promoting these SIE auctions on the site. You can register to be updated every week of the new properties that are listed. But I think we've probably got about 500-600 properties today that are SIE auctions that are coming up.
So just to confirm then, that's going to tell me when the sheriff auction actually is.
That's correct.
What does SIE stand for? Just for
sale and execution. Excuse
okay.
the abbreviation. Yeah. I'm glad that you corrected me there. So guys, really the trick with a sale and execution auction is the sheriff is selling it. This is not a person that's got a real incentive to make sure he gets the best price. In most of these sale and execution auctions, you'll have the sheriff. You'll have one local fellow who's very persistent who goes to all these auctions one after the other. You'll have the bank, and the bank is a bondholder. The bank will sit at the auction. They'll wait and see what price is bid, and then they will decide after the auction whether they allow that property to be sold, in which case it literally goes to the person that has acquired it by auction under the hammer, or they will take it in themselves, and it then will become effectively a property in possession, PRP, the term is. So the banks don't want to take properties in, desperately don't want to take properties in, so they would prefer them to sell at the sheriff's auction. So the process is, if you're going to a sheriff's auction, make sure that when you get there, you know everything about that property.
And just as a matter of interest, do you help the clients, if I was on your website prior to going to sheriff's auction, could I look at the property and try and get as much information prior to the auction? Because guys, that's how they burn their fingers. You know, it looks hell of a good when you're standing there and everyone's making lots of noise, and then you got to look at the property the next day, and you haven't bought such a great bargain, basically.
Indeed, you're right. So, guys, remember that when you're buying a sale and execution, you're buying that property absolutely footstoots. You can be rest assured you're going to have a problem with arrears rates. You're going to find that the electrics is a mess, and you're going to have to spend 10 grand on rewiring the house first before you can get your compliance, which you have to pay for incidentally. You pay all the costs. Remember, you're buying that thing as it stands. And the other thing that you have to bear in mind is you might have a problem getting that tenant out. You might face delays because the previous owner is trying to interdict to stop the sale from going through. So there are a number of challenges. How do we help you? That was the question. The answer is, first of all, we try and collaborate as much information as possible about the property. We actually visit every one of these SIE properties. In many circumstances, we can't get into the property because the previous owner is still there. We're trying to get better at that. But the thing to do is also to get a valuation report. We sell a valuation report for 25 to 50 bucks, depending on the quality of it. This is a very good, substantial valuation. It comes from a crowd called Lightstone, and it will give you an indication of what that property is worth today. And it'll give you some comparatives of what other properties in the area are selling for.
Just to and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that most of the banks use Lightstone to value properties as well.
Correct.
They do send valuers out,
yeah.
but they also use it. This is substantial evidence that they use. So you know what you're using is the same thing the bank's using before they're granting people loans, basically.
Absolutely. So the valuation is very important. It'll give you a very good idea of what's going on in the market without having to go around and speak to a dozen estate agents. But I recommend you do that as well, because it will give you an idea of what sort of, if you're an investor, what rental yield you're going to get from that place. Then, of course, if you really want to be very careful, go and check to see what the rates is outstanding on it. I'm afraid there's no easy way to do that that I know of. Yeah, try and guess the condition. But you've got to understand there's going to be some hidden costs, and so you've got to make sure that you buy that place at a value that is that allows for you to pay these additional costs.
Look, I think the very important thing, and what Justin's touched on, is that when I started to try and understand auctions, which we all know that we should be buying repossessed properties and auctions and everything else, but when you actually start trying to understand it, what I worked out is there's 5 different stages in the process, and every different stage has pros and cons and risks attached, etc. And I think what's very important for people is that tonight's not the forum for it, but we will be providing information on that type of thing where people need to understand the pros and cons, because there are pros to sheriffs that there aren't at PRPs and vice versa, basically. So I think just to sort of finish off on that one, and Justin's gone into it in quite a lot of detail, you do need to understand that, and please don't go to the sheriff's auction and put your hand up and think you've won a great option, because unfortunately there's too many stories of guys burning their fingers. And we don't want you to be one of those people. So, but moving along, and you have alluded to it with regards to Australia. So, I will pretty much move on other than to say, do you see the trends changing? In Australia, 70-odd% of properties are sold through auctions, even where the estate agent is running it, etc., etc. I don't know the percentage in South Africa, but I know it's a lot lower than that. Do you see the trend going in that direction?
Yeah, and guys, what we are trying to do to get behind that ourselves, because we believe in auction, we like auction, is we're trying to get the traditional auctioneers to publish their properties on our site with the date of the auction, but of course to give you all the information about the property first. So traditionally you get an ad in the newspaper, you get one photograph, and you have to physically go to the property before you go and attend the auction. So what we want to do is we want to get the auctioneer to do the virtual tour and to allow us to compile proper information on their property. If we can do that, then it's great, because we can give you the information you need, and the only difference between a traditional sale and the auction sale will be you will then go to the property, you'll make sure it's the property that you want to buy, and then at the particular day of the auction, you'll go to the auction and it'll go under the hammer, and then hopefully if there's enough people at the auction, it will achieve its selling price, and the auctioneer will then, you'll be awarded the property, and you know that you've got that property. So yeah, it's really about getting more buyers to the property to make it work, and then I think the sellers will start to trust it more.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think both for the seller's perspective and some of your partners, the auctioneers and everything else, I really personally think that they should look into more of the Australian model. I was there last year. It's incredible. They had a show house for half an hour, so they don't sit waiting there for 5-6 hours like we do in our country. And in half an hour, 15 couples walk through the house.
Yeah.
Which also from a seller's perspective is good, because it creates demand. It's a very, very efficient market. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of good deals because it's so efficient, but that's ultimately, that's buyer and seller, and that's what we want to be aiming for, basically.
For sure. And obviously all those guys have already looked at their property in great detail on realestate.com.au.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. So I think you've hit the nail right on the. Now, just with regards to where do you see this going in 10 years? I've got a house to sell in 10 years. With you've got your finger on the pulse in terms of the internet and auctions and what's happening. It's changed so much in the last 10 years. Where do you see the next 10 years going?
Well, should I say what I hope will happen, or should I say what I think will happen?
Give us a bit of both, basically.
Okay, I think the blue sky is that the technology is out there for you to buy a house by click of a button. In other words, technically you could transfer that house by pushing a button. The deeds office has to be automated, the banks have got to be automated, everyone's got to be automated, and it's got to be a slick machine. Incidentally, if you'd asked me this 10 years ago, I would have said that that's where we'll be today. I've grown up a bit and got grey hair, and I realize that these things don't happen like that. So probably where we'll be is there won't be a newspaper with print in it, I'm afraid. There will be a lot more sophisticated information on the web. It will be 3D. It will be all the data that you possibly need to see about that house. You will get a walkthrough on every property. And yeah, I think that it will be a very efficient sale process. I still see auction being part of it. That means that you might have an agent, you might visit the property with an agent, you might put in your offer with an agent, but it will probably be decided slightly differently.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a more sophisticated version of where we're at now. But print will have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we can safely say that. And just sort of to finish off then, as a leader in the property industry and the internet in South Africa, I'm sure you're proud that all your marketing is the busiest website in South Africa.
Yeah.
It's certainly one of your accolades. Is there anything else that you think is interesting in terms of what's happening, what's changing, tips for the viewers in terms of how they can possibly use the internet, use private property going forward to both buy and sell?
Yeah, I think we'd have to understand who's online at the moment. If you're an investor, then the way to look for decent properties is to register on our website and others and put down your search criteria. And then you will get these things flicked to you by email or by SMS, whatever you subscribe to. And then you can look at the data and you can learn choose a particular area that you're interested in. Don't be wild and try and buy stuff all over the place. And you'll eventually, just from the information coming through, you can look at a listing and say, gee, that's a good deal. I think I need to look at this thing. Then you can click on it. You can zoom around the pictures, or hopefully if there are virtual tours and stuff, you can walk through the property. And you will know straight away if that thing is a property worth looking at. Bing, save it to your favorites, do a little valuation report, I do, and have a look and see what the market price is relative to the asking price. And man, if that's a property worth having a look at, contact the agent and take the trouble of going out and having a look at it. And it just is such an easy way to get into the business of investing in property, because the data comes to you. You don't have to go and search for it. So yeah, that's the one thing. Yeah, there's obviously there is so much that we have in store, but I think that maybe is for another night.
Let's watch the space.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
I mean, I think, look, just to sum it up, I always loved Dolph DeRuis, and that book, Real Estate Riches, one of the first sort of property books I read many years ago. And he said in that to find a good investment property, or to find any property, even a good home, you've got to look at 100 properties. You know, you've got to make a bid on 10. You've got to be accepted by 3 and only sort of buy 1. And I remember thinking, you know, many years ago when I read that book, crosses 100 properties is a lot of weekends, a lot of show houses, a lot of street walking, you know. And the beauty is nowadays with the technology, you can probably look at 100 properties, you know, literally in the space of 10 minutes, because you can use all the filters and everything else. So, you know, I think it's incredibly what's happened. The challenge is that necessarily some of those real perler deals might not be available, because it's so much more efficient that everyone else knows the value, you know, in terms of what's happening. So there are pros and cons to both sides. Ladies and gentlemen, from your side, Justin, is there anything else? If anyone's got any questions, please fire them through to us. We are coming to the end of our presentation in terms of what we want. I can see that we don't have any questions coming through at the moment. Is there anything else from your side that you think would be of value?
I think, you know, we started off talking about the property market and where we're at right now, and I said that it would be quite flat. But the interesting thing is, seeing we're talking about internet, is we've got kind of a first handle on the amount of interest people have in property at any particular minute. And I must tell you that in the last 3 weeks, we've had absolutely unprecedented amount of interest in property, people looking deeply into our website, looking at property. To give you an idea, we expect this month to have over 1 million unique visitors. That's unique computers logging onto our website. And interestingly, over 300,000 already on their mobile phones searching for property, if you can believe that. It's a very interesting phenomenon. Maybe we'll be wrong about it being flat this year, but I can tell you it's going to be a lot better than last year. And I think we'll get to normal trade. We just won't see house prices going ballistic.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, that's fascinating, actually. And just in terms of that 1 million views or users that you mentioned, what is that? Where was it 2 years ago, as you said, when the growth started?
It's difficult to go so far back, because obviously we've learned a lot and the market's more online. So more people are online than were 2 years ago. So it's deceptive to go so far back. But I think if you take the last year, you'll find that we were flat over the winter at probably about 600, 700,000, you know, growing a little bit, but in very, very small increments, probably natural new people joining the internet, and, you know, and new people looking for property online as opposed to not. But this is unprecedented. There's no way that you can explain such a massive growth in 3 weeks. This is people deciding that they're going to do something this year with their lives, and maybe noticing that interest rates are quite low. You know, maybe they read the newspaper. I don't know. But guys, that's just an interesting point, and so maybe that's a very positive thing for us, that live our lives thinking about real estate.
Two questions on that. The first one: is there any demographics that is of interest in terms of growth, or is it across the board that you see it from a South African perspective?
It's very interesting. It's the bottom end of the market. I mean, we all know that. We look at the figures released by Jacques du Toit at ABSA, and I'm afraid that's where the action is even now. And remember, it's also an area of the market that took the most strain with the financial crisis, because these are the people that couldn't service their bonds and didn't service their bonds because they were heavily in debt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's still very, very strong demand there. But interestingly, does that mean that we should be buying those properties as investors, or does it mean we should be looking at an area of the market that's not very active? Because I think we started touching on this earlier, just before the thing. What are the developers doing at the moment? The developers need to actually get back to work. So they're saying, where's the market? The market's all under 80 square meter little boxes, gas units in a good area, and they're pumping these things out, and they're launching them already, crazy. And it's hard work, but they're selling them. But are we not oversaturating that part of the market? And will we not find that when the market normalizes, suddenly that dead end of the market, which is the 1.5 million, suddenly starts to become the area that appreciates in price because there's been no new supply?
It's very interesting. It's a very interesting theory to look at it. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, so don't buy where the market's telling you it's a good place to buy. But guys, anyway, that's where the activity is.
And one last question. Based on your experience of other markets around the world and internet and stuff, how does South Africa fare in terms of the growth and the development? Obviously America, England, Australia are sort of leaps ahead. I don't know about other countries, but how do we fit in the picture, in terms of emerging markets and stuff?
Are you talking about real estate?
Real estate and using the internet and real estate and...
Well, let's start off with Africa, because Africa is a fascinating continent. This is a continent geographically the size of China and India put together.
Really?
It's got more wealth than China and India put together, sitting in the ground undiscovered. That's my guess, I think. But it has unbelievable potential. Yet we have a combined GDP of probably under $1 trillion. We have a population of a fraction of what China and India have. But the interesting thing that I have realized is that countries that prosper, that have very, very strong GDPs, generally have a sophisticated residential real estate market. That means it's about ownership and the ability to use your home as collateral for perhaps starting a business or sending your child to get a decent education. It's so interesting. The countries that are the least sophisticated don't have a deeds office. They've got real estate, but it's not very good collateral because no one holds the title deed.
Yeah.
So in Africa, the real estate that's out there, it's pretty much, if you're in occupation, stay there. And it's a pity because I was in Kenya a couple of weeks ago and I spoke to some real estate guys there, and I was amazed at the yields that they're getting. I mean, they're building a new block of flats and getting yields of 35%.
Yes.
But everything is with cash.
Yeah,
so and no lift, and it's an 8-story building, by the way. But it's fascinating. But you struggle to buy that flat unless you've got cash because no one's going to lend you the money against it. So that means that there's not a great deal of trade in real estate. Everyone is renting. So that means that it doesn't bode well for internet. But internet in these countries, incidentally, is developing faster than our internet's developing. So, yeah, the potential is still there.
Watch that space.
Yeah. But yeah, if you look at the rest of the world, I mean, it's just crazy how developed the internet is. There's always one dominant player in every country, and that dominant player owns the entire market. And these are companies that are enormously lucrative and do a fantastic job of advertising. The thing is, if you're going to look for property, are you going to go to 5 sites, all of them with 10% or 20% of the market, or are you going to go to one site where everything is?
Yeah.
So that's why
it's like search. It's Google.
Yeah, it just tips all into one site.
Yeah.
So you'll end up with one guy just becoming completely dominant, and it's very difficult for anybody else to survive.
Just my interest, is India and China, have they got dominant marketplaces in terms of the internet and property and stuff?
Yeah, I must say I don't know much about China. India is a lot more like Africa, perhaps more like Nigeria. The market is all cash driven, and it's a very unregulated real estate environment. but there are a couple of real estate portals that are gathering momentum in India.
Okay.
99 acres, and there's a couple of quite interesting sites there. But it's definitely lags behind China. I think China's got a lot more real estate online, and it's mostly new build. But yeah, it's the emerging market is very interesting. Certainly Brazil and countries like that, they've got the dominant portals where all the real estate is. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting space.
Fantastic. Well, guys, from my side, I really want to thank Justin tonight. You're a wealth of information, and I personally could sit here and ask you questions for 3 hours, but I think your wife would kill me. But no, I really want to thank you for your time tonight. I think we've answered everyone's questions, because I'm not seeing any questions coming through here. So certainly from our side, from RPS's side, it's really a pleasure to have you online and to understand it. And as you said, we need to watch the space, because I think the next 10 years, if it's going to be anything like what's happened over the last 10 years, it's going to be amazing as to what's going to happen with internet, with auctions, and property in general. So thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening. Thanks,
Cheers.
Freddie.
Thanks.
Cheers.